Hello aspirants and welcome again to Legacy IAS Academy. In this lecture, we will be discussing a very interesting topic with respect to India's trade. So we will try to understand in this lecture as to who is a better trade partner for India. Is it Russia, who is also an all-weather friend of India, or is it the USA, who has kept on changing its policy towards India every now and then, and at important times have not even supported India, and who has now imposed huge amount of tariffs on India. So we will discuss, analyze, compare, and then give a verdict as to who is a better trading partner. So let's get started. Now, what is the context? Why are we required to do so or discuss this particular topic? That is because secondary sanctions have been imposed on India by the United States of America. Now, what are secondary sanctions? See, first, USA had imposed a primary sanction on Russia. So, USA imposing a primary sanction on Russia means that USA is not going to trade with Russia. Now, everything is fine till here. But then what happens is, USA also imposes a secondary sanction on Russia. Now, what is a secondary sanction? If there is a secondary sanction, then what happens is any other country who may trade with Russia, on them also USA is going to impose the sanctions. That is what is meant by the secondary sanctions. And on Russia, that secondary sanction is imposed. And at the same time, India is actually trading with Russia. In fact, India's trade with Russia in the last few years has considerably increased. It has become multi-fold trade with Russia. So because of which, what has USA done? USA has imposed a penal tariff of 25%. What is this penal tariff? This is sort of a punishment which USA is giving to India just because we are trading with Russia. Now, in addition to this, another 25% of tariff is imposed on India. Why? As a reciprocal tariff. What is a reciprocal tariff? So, USA identified the trading partners of USA with which USA has a trade deficit. So, against India also, USA has a trade deficit. Trade deficit means what? When your exports are less than the imports. For example, when USA imports a lot from India and USA exports very less to India, so USA is going to have a trade deficit because USA is going to pay a very huge amount for the imports that are coming from India, and USA is going to earn a very small amount for the exports that it is giving to India. As a result of which, USA is going to have a huge trade deficit. Now, to lower the trade deficit, USA has imposed 25% of tariff. Now, how will this help? When you impose a tariff, what will happen is all the goods and services, not all, on whatever goods and services it is imposed, on those goods and services, what will happen is when they enter USA, let's say a particular thing is costing $100, but since there are 25% tariffs, so that is now going to be of $125. Because of which, what will happen? The cost will increase, so the USA citizens would be less likely to import from India. As a result of which, USA's goods and services that are coming to USA from India are going to reduce. So USA, as a result of which, to lower the trade deficit, has imposed 25% of tariff plus another 25% of tariff. So the total tariff rate here is 50%. As a result of which, a $100 thing will now be costing $150 for the USA citizen. Now, it is a lost scenario for US citizen because things will be costly. But for the US administration, Donald Trump thinks that that's a good thing because their import bill will go down. Since the cost will increase, USA people will demand less of India's products, as a result of which the imports will reduce, as a result of which the trade deficit will narrow down. That is the idea of Donald Trump to impose these tariffs. So these are the two reasons why the tariffs are imposed, and that is why we are discussing, because penal tariff is on us is on account of trading with Russia. That is why we are trying to understand, is Russia a better trade partner or is USA a better trading partner? Now, before we move ahead, an important announcement of the new batches that are starting at Legacy IAS Academy, wherein you will be taught, mentored, guided, and trained by the experts of UPSC Civil Services Examination field. Now, when you enroll with Legacy IAS Academy, there are various advantages that you get. Some of them are listed here. First is, of course, the comprehensive coverage of GS paper up to the micro topic level. Then you'll have one-on-one mentorship, which for me probably is the outstanding feature of Legacy IAS Academy. There will be regular interactions with the educators, the teachers that you just saw. And remember, the mentors will also be the teachers that you have seen with experience, who themselves have given the personality test of UPSC Civil Services Examination. The maximum number of students per batch is only 40 for high individual student attention. You will be getting daily mains answer writing practice, as well as the test series, of course, for prelims and mains both. Another important feature here is the 360-degree current affairs approach, in which what happens is we dedicate an entire day for current affairs live classes every week, so that all your current affairs needs are met via these sessions. Now, if you want to enroll with us, you can simply download our app or visit our website, that is www.legacyIAS.com, or call on the numbers that are here on your screen. Now, let's come back to the comparison. So let's talk about India's trade in goods with respect to both USA and Russia. First, starting with USA. So as I was saying, India has a trade surplus with USA. That means USA is having a trade deficit with India. Now, what is the quantum of that? So the Indian exports to USA is to the tune of $87 billion. And how much are we importing from USA? Only $45 billion. As a result of which, what will happen is over $42 billion of trade surplus is what India is having against USA. And this is what is causing frustration to the Trump administration, because of which they are imposing tariffs. But please understand, it's not that trade deficit is completely a bad thing, or it has to be definitely narrowed. Why? Because USA is a developed country, its citizens would demand more. Also, we are exporting a lot of services to the USA, which is leading to a trade surplus in India's balance of payment. That is what the reason is. Indian engineers, Indian software developers, etc., are working for USA companies, and they are creating the assets for them, which is generating a huge amount of revenue also for them. This point by Trump has been completely ignored over there. Let's move ahead. Let's see what is the situation with respect to Russia. Now, when it comes to Russia, India has a trade deficit, right? So let us see. Exports to Russia is quite less than $5 billion. Very less exports. At the same time, the imports from Russia is very high, that is $64 billion. So what should we do? Should we start imposing huge amount of tariffs? Should we stop taking crude oil from Russia? No, that's not the case. Why? Because the trade deficit might definitely be there, but crude oil is the major part of it, and crude oil is one of the compulsory imports that we have. At the same time, Russia is selling crude oil to us at a very, very cheap price. If we don't take it here from Russia, we'll have to take it from somewhere else, and we will be required to pay an even higher amount elsewhere. So even though we are in a deficit, this is a much required deficit and a good deficit, because if we buy this crude oil from someone else, we will be paying even more. So as a result of which, we have a trade deficit with Russia close to $60 billion. So as far as trade deficit and surplus is concerned, basically USA looks like a better trading partner for India. But as I said, the trade surplus and deficit is not the only thing. There are various other things also to be concerned. So let us have a look at that first. Now, the trade deficit and surplus situation we have seen. Now let us see what are the service and investment linkages that are existing. So our trade with USA is basically with respect to the IT businesses, technology, electronics, etc. So there are quite a lot of linkages with respect to the services sector. So IT, business, travel, tech partnerships, semiconductor, space, telecom, all these linkages majorly in the services sector are there with the USA. At the same time, USA is a major source of FDI in India. What about Russia? With Russia, we have limited services trade. Services trade with Russia is quite less. The major trade here is in goods, and in goods also it is the crude oil. At the same time, we have a good collaboration with Russia in the defense sector. We have been acquiring a good amount of submarines from Russia, and not just that, when Russia exports things to India in defense specifically, like the submarines, it also transfers the technology to India, which then helps us to build those same things in the coming future as well. So that defense legacy collaboration with Russia exists. As far as FDI is concerned, that flow is low. So if we have to compare in the linkages, probably USA wins. In FDI, USA wins. But India is having a good legacy defense collaboration with Russia, where probably, definitely, in fact, Russia wins. Now let's look at the trade composition. What all things are we trading with USA and Russia? So when it comes to USA, I have already told you about high value services. In addition to this, there are certain important things like the pharma is quite important. Apart from that, there are machinery, gems, textiles, and automobile components as well. When it comes to Russia, there is just two-word phrase, that is crude oil. So crude oil basically is having close to 41% share, and then of course we have fertilizers and defense equipment as well. So crude oil is a compulsory export. Defense also you can say to be a compulsory import, especially when you are surrounded by such amazing countries, right? So defense becomes again very, very important for India. So here you can see probably the growth is going to be faster with respect to this trade. Surplus is also there. But here some sort of necessity is coming into the picture when you talk about trade with Russia. Now, what is the impact on India's economy with respect to trade with these countries? When we trade with USA, there is a surplus. Huge number of people are working for USA companies. So, employment multiplier. The labor market, employment improves. Very important. Why? Because India has been facing jobless growth. What is jobless growth? Does jobless growth mean there is no increase in job? No, it is not like that. So what does it mean? It means that the growth is there, but the proportionately increase in the jobs are not there. Jobs are still increasing, but at a proportionately slower pace than what they should have as per what the growth is. So jobless growth. So it helps over here. It helps our current account balance. It helps to give us surplus. Technology and supply chain, etc. is good with respect to the trade with USA. Now, when it comes to Russia, so with Russia, what is the impact? We get from Russia energy security. Our energy security, it's very important. And in energy security, economy is the secondary point. The primary point for energy security is safety, security, sovereignty, defense, military system of India is quite important. What if we don't have crude oil? What if crude oil is not accessible to us? The economy and all will fail later. First, what will happen? The entire military machinery might come to a standstill. The jet plane, fighter jets, the tankers, etc. would come to a standstill. Crude oil is a necessary import. So that is very important over here. And we are getting discounted crude oil, which controls inflation. We are getting crude oil cheaply, so that is helping us to deal with inflation as well. However, the deficit widens. The deficit is increasing because we are buying too much of crude oil from Russia, so deficit is definitely decreasing there. But again, the counter argument to the increasing deficit is what? If I don't buy from Russia, I buy somewhere else, I'll have to pay even more. So this is not necessarily a negative point. The last thing is the sanction risk. because today there are sanctions, tomorrow there might be more sanctions, so we might have to live in threat. But as a sovereign, should we be, taking a step back just because of sanctions? Probably not, right? We have to be more diplomatic over there. Now, if you look at the risk matrix with respect to the market risk, there is high tariff in USA, low in Russia, so this takes the win. If you talk about payment risk, low payment risk from USA side, high payment risk from Russia, because Russia itself is dealing with economic issues and sanctions of USA. Strategic risk, USA keeps on changing the policy, so should we believe or basically go or incline, lean towards USA? Probably not. But Russia has been our all-weather friend. However, recently we have seen Russia leaning towards China. But there is a reason for that. What is that reason? USA imposing sanctions on Russia, so Russia has to look for alternates. India is one alternate, the other alternate for them is China, as a result of which they are looking towards China as well. With respect to price risk, the price risk in USA is not much, it is stable, but oil price volatility is high, so price risk will be there over here. So this is the risk metrics. So what is the verdict over here? If you talk about purely economic form, possibly USA is a better trading partner with respect to growth, with respect to employment, so on and so forth. However, there are certain things which Russia provides with USA cannot. Indispensable for our energy security. If you talk about economy plus approach, means in addition to economy, what other thing Russia provides? Reliability. You can rely on Russia to take India's side. There are other things that we get from Russia is the support in the United Nations Security Council. We have been all-weather friend and have been together in the ups and downs. So that also holds a lot of value, not economic, but definitely diplomatic and strategic, because there are 5 permanent UNSC members. Russia is one of them, and Russia is the one who has always sided with India on any decisions in the United Nations Security Council. That plays a very important role, right? So purely economic, probably USA, but economy plus approach, Russia is also important. So what can we do? We cannot and we should not be choosing either or, either this or that. Rather, we should try to balance and try to deal with both of them. So we should be doing what? We should be, the best policy for us should be that negotiate with USA for the growth, for technology, etc. and also keep on trading with Russia for the discounted crude oil, for the energy security, for defense as well. So the time is now to balance both the erstwhile superpower. Now, Russia is not that of a superpower which it was during the Cold War era, but still it is a big player. It is still a permanent member of the UNSC, and USA, of course, is one of the superpowers. China could be termed as another one, and India wants to become a superpower. So we have to be involved in the game, and we have to continue dealing with both, and we have to be very strategic and diplomatic in this regard. Thank you.